Have you ever looked at your life and felt like you're just following a script? Like your choices aren't yours, but are merely the result of an algorithm designed to keep you productive and happy? Most of us live in a glass house, exposed, yet we feel more invisible than ever. We are told that transparency is safety, but deep down, we know it's a cage. Today, I'm not here to summarize a book. I'm here to show you the blueprint of your own imprisonment. Over a century ago, Yevgeny Zamyatin wrote a forbidden manual called We. It doesn't just tell a story, it explains why your imagination is considered a disease by the world you live in. Stay with me until the end, and you'll realize why the most dangerous thing you can own in 2026 is a secret. At Daily Books, we don't just read, we look into the abyss. Now, before we fully enter this glass labyrinth, we need to look at who drew the plans we have in our hands. Don't just think of him as a writer, he was actually the embodiment of contradictions. Born in 1884 in the heart of Russia, he was a shipbuilding engineer. He dealt with steel, mathematics, the calculable. But that's where the real story begins. Zamyatin didn't just read about the revolution in books. He was right there on the barricades. He joined the Bolsheviks, was imprisoned, exiled. But then, do you know what happened? When the new world he had dreamed of was established, Zamyatin realized something chilling. Once institutionalized, the revolution turned into a machine that devoured its own children. He knew machines. He knew their coldness, their unstoppability. When he wrote his novel in 1921, he was actually holding a mirror to his own comrades. "Look," he said, "this perfect order you have created reduces man to nothing more than a cog." Of course, this honesty did not go unpunished. The book became the first work banned by the Soviet censorship board. Imagine, an order you went to prison for exiles you from your own dreams. Zamyatin's life was actually a stand against Dostoevsky's famous insistence in Notes from Underground that 2 times 2 equals 4. He defended that murky human realm where 2 times 2 does not always equal 4. He spent the last years of his life in Paris as a foreigner in silence. But his legacy seeped into the minds of every revolutionary thinker who came after him. George Orwell looked to Zamyatin's dusty pages when writing 1984. Huxley drew inspiration from Zamyatin's engineering genius when conceiving the sterile hell of Brave New World. Even today, we can trace the echoes of Zamyatin's sharp, rational fear in the suffocating control mechanisms of Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. So, why would a person fear the world they created so much? Zamyatin wasn't just making a political critique. He was saying that there could be no final revolution. Because, according to him, if a revolution is the last one, it is no longer a revolution, but a dogma, a death. Energy is everywhere. But so is entropy, he would say. To him, a world where everything is explained with mathematical certainty is actually a living graveyard. And today, those smart devices in your pocket, the algorithms that score your every move, and the modern systems trying to turn you into your most efficient version, aren't they all actually part of that single state Zamyatin envisioned in the 1920s? Do you think we are truly free, or are we just well-behaved numbers playing the roles we've been given in a room woven from invisible glass? Zamyatin lost everything for asking this question, but perhaps thanks to him, we can still remember what we have lost. Now, let's take a closer look at D501's transparent world, which is actually our own reflection. But be careful. If you live in a glass house, you need to know exactly where to throw the stone.
We are now stepping into the world of D503, that sterile paradise where everything is transparent, every corner woven from glass. But there is a problem in this paradise. Here, everything, every second, even every blink of an eye is pre-calculated. As Zamyatin describes the single state to us, he actually confronts us with modern humanity's, that is your and my, greatest obsession, perfection. D503 is the chief engineer of this world. He's building the Integral, that enormous spacecraft. Do you know what his mission is? To bring this compulsory happiness to the rest of the universe, to those wild planets yet to be discovered. Think about it for a moment. When you make happiness compulsory, is it still a blessing or is it an execution? Here, people have long since lost their names. They are now just numbers. They've been stripped of the historical burden that names bring, of that individual chaos. Consider O90, one of the women in D503's life. She is also a number. Their relationship consists of mechanical unions, at times determined by the state, facilitated by pink coupons. There's no emotion, no passion, no electric shock created by an unexpected touch. There is only the satisfaction of a biological need, like the lubrication of a machine. Zamyatin poses a very disturbing question here. If everything is transparent, if your neighbor watches your every moment from behind glass walls, can we really speak of true morality? What we call morality lies in the secret, in the decisions we make when no one is watching. Where everyone watches everyone else, morality dies, replaced only by flawless obedience. D503 writes in his diary, "We are the luckiest generation in the world because we have been freed from that wild, uncontrollable freedom." Can you hear the terrible irony in that sentence? Freedom is seen not as a salvation for the single state, but as a burden, a disease. Now I want you to look back at your own life. Aren't we doing something similar today? We are so tired of deciding, choosing, making mistakes that we allow algorithms to choose which movie we watch, which music we listen to, even who we meet. We are actually using the digital version of those pink coupons. In Zamyatin's one state, the word I is the greatest crime. It has been erased from dictionaries. Only we exists. But the moment you say we, you strangle that unique, dark, and indescribable part of the individual with your own hands. So why are we so afraid of ourselves? Why does being part of a system, a group, an ideology feel safer than standing alone in that infinite void? Because freedom brings with it a heavy responsibility, and responsibility is the hardest burden to bear. D503 does not want to bear this burden. He is in love with the comfort of a predictable life behind glass walls, where everything is as clear as 2 + 2 = 4. But mathematics, by its very nature, is cold. Humans are warm and sweat. When D503's orderly life begins to be shaken by emotion, a mathematical margin of error, the first cracks appear in the glass. When mathematics breaks down, life begins, my friend. But that life also brings death, betrayal, and indescribable pain. Now I ask you, would you choose to be a real I at the cost of suffering, or the numbing peace of a we where everything runs smoothly? When Zamyatin asked this question, it was 1921. Today, in 2026, this question is no longer a literary debate. It is the silent decision you make every morning when you open your phone screen. That is why this book is not a story, but the biography of that glass cage you have yet to notice. Now, let's push that cage a little harder together, because mathematics is about to be wrong.
Right at this point, a shadow begins to appear between those smooth glass walls. I-330. Don't see her merely as a character, a woman, or a number.
I-330 is a bloody crack in the one-state, sterile, geometric, and rational world. She is a song of rebellion. In creating this figure, Zamyatin actually places the woman's ancient, transformative, and irrational power, which defies any equation, at the heart of the story. When D503 falls in love with her, he's not just falling in love with a woman, but with the uncontrollable chaos of life itself. As Nietzsche said, chaos must be within a man to give birth to a star. I-330 awakens the chaos within D503, which has been suppressed and cemented for centuries, like an earthquake. In his forbidden, secret meetings with her, D503 experiences everything banned by the single state. He wears old clothes, drinks alcohol, and most dangerously, begins to think. And the state's greatest fear, that of its massive surveillance apparatus, comes true. D503 realizes he has a soul. The doctors are quick to diagnose him. You have developed a soul, which is a serious illness. Just think, a world where the soul is seen as a tumor and imagination as a virus that must be eradicated immediately. Zamyatin isn't just criticizing the Soviet Union of the 1920s here. He's also sending a stern message to all those modern medical approaches that try to normalize us today, and to the schools of psychology that seek to make us all the same. If you are outside the norm, you are sick. If you are unhappy, you are disrupting the system's gears and must be treated immediately. But what if unhappiness is your most human right? What if that pain is the only real thing that makes you who you are? Zamyatin's I-330 is like the heroes of ancient Greek tragedies. He walks into the fire knowingly, willingly, and with great passion. When D503 takes him behind that sacred green wall, into the wild and uncontrolled realm of nature, we are shaken along with him. There are hairy, sweaty, smelly, ugly people there. That is, real people. At that moment, we understand that the smooth glass of the single state has actually stripped humanity layer by layer like a skin-changing session, leaving only cold glass behind. Let's open a parenthesis here. Do you see the jarring connection between the rigid hierarchy in Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale and Zamyatin's One State? In both worlds, the female body, female desire, and the female power to create are coded as the system's greatest threat. Because desire cannot be planned. Desire doesn't fit into any Excel spreadsheet or algorithm. I-330 teaches D503 not only to make love, but also to betray. Loyalty is a shackle when it's to the system, but when it's to a person, an idea, or a feeling, it is freedom itself. Who are you loyal to today? To those digital eyes that follow you every moment? Or to that wild voice inside you, calling you to your own precipice? Math is breaking down, my friend, because love is the possibility that 2 times 2 equals 5. And that possibility is the end of the one state.
And the inevitable end is approaching. The benefactor takes the stage. The God-King of the single state, the cold hand at the helm of that enormous machine. He brings his people, his numbers, great news, the great operation. Science has finally declared its ultimate victory. The center of imagination in the brain has been found, and the way to destroy it with X-rays has been discovered. No one will dream anymore. No one will think another world is possible. No one will rebel. This is actually the end of humanity, but for the single state,
It is the magnificent completion of history. D503 is now struggling on that fine line between two worlds. On one side, the dangerous, painful, but vibrant spirit promised by I-330. On the other, the smooth, painless, and peaceful void promised by the state. Zamyatin forces us to the edge of an ethical precipice and makes us look down. If you were given the chance to be freed from all those heavy thoughts that trouble you, keep you awake, and make you question everything in a single session, would you do it? I'm not talking about erasing your memory. I'm talking about directly removing your ability to feel. Zamyatin argues that suffering is the most fundamental, inseparable part of being human. Without suffering, happiness is just an empty word, a mechanical data entry. Toward the end of the book, D503 experiences that shocking confrontation with the benefactor himself. The benefactor asks him the oldest and most poisonous question in history. What do people really want? Freedom or happiness? And then gives his own dark answer. People always prefer happiness under a secure hand that feeds them and tells them what to do every morning, to the terrible, bottomless uncertainty that freedom brings. Does this sentence give you goosebumps? Because even though this sentence was written in 1921, it echoes on every corner in the world of 2026. How willing we are to give up our freedom, our privacy, in the name of security, in the name of comfort, aren't we? Then the operation begins. The numbers enter the queue with great reverence. This is the sight of a society that willingly brainwashes itself, surrendering its soul with its own hands. Whisper, D503 is in that line. Until the very last moment, he tries to remember I-330's scent, her rebellious smile. But when he gets up from the operating table, he is no longer an engineer. He is just an object, a function. As the woman he loves, I-330 is tortured before his eyes, he watches with the cold detachment of someone solving a math problem. No emotion, no horror, no mercy. Just a rational and sterile observation. This, my friend, is the true hell Zamyatin shows us. Not burning, but becoming numb. Watching someone else's pain and feeling nothing. Sigh. What about us? As we scroll through thousands of tragedies on our screens every day, could we too have already undergone that great operation? Have we lost our imagination or our connection to the pain of others?
And we come to that chilling, soul-piercing final sentence of the book. Reason must prevail. D503 is no longer a human being. He is now a perfect cog in the machine of the single state. But the story doesn't end here. Outside, beyond the green wall, in that wild world, the rebellion continues. Zamyatin offers us no cheap hope, but he leaves us with a tremendous possibility. As I-330 gasps for breath beneath that Bell machine, he has actually proven something to the whole world. There is no final revolution. Just as numbers are infinite, so too must man's hunger for freedom and revolutions be infinite. Every end we declare is actually the beginning of a new chaos. Why do we at Daily Books see this century-old novel as today's greatest mirror? Because we too are now residents of a glass city. Our smooth, filtered lives on social media, invisible systems that score our every move and turn us into consumption data. We too voluntarily lie down on the table of that great operation every day. We trade our imagination for ready-made templates, emojis, and short videos that direct us only toward consumption and short-lived pleasures. When Zamyatin died in exile in Paris in 1937, in poverty and silence,
The only thing left beside him was the heavy pain this novel left behind. But he left us a legacy far more valuable than money, the duty to protect the chaos within, that illness that is the soul, at any cost. Now I want to ask you, will you join that safe queue like D503 and surrender? Or will you, like I-330, gamble your life away at a casino table to at least crack those glass walls? Maybe the first thing you should do when you close this video is something completely silly and completely yours, something no one is watching, no algorithm can predict. Read a poem, write a heartfelt letter to a stranger, or just turn off your phone and stare into that pitch-black void so that your soul can sprout anew in that darkness. Remember, my friend, the system only wins when you are predictable, when you are just a number. Surprise them. Surprise yourself. Love that illness inside you, because the only thing that makes you human is that tumor they call imagination. Thank you for walking with us in this dim corridor of daily books on this long and dark journey. We're not just talking about books here. We're talking about the fresh wounds those books leave on you, on your soul. If that wound stings a little in you today, if you say, "I'm here too," become part of this silent community. In our next exhibition, we will enter the even darker, even more suffocating rooms of classic dystopias. Before entering George Orwell's famous Room 101, never forget Zamyatin's glass palace and the immense spirit lost there. Because when the glass breaks, the real story begins. And remember, we are much more than just us. Are we part of the future, or are we building that future with our own hands every morning? The choice is yours, my friend without a number. For now, stay in that silence. See you soon.